Happy Monday, everyone. So today we are in week 2 and we are going to be going through water-soluble vitamin pharmacokinetics. Okay. Again, we will have kind of a plan. I'm hoping you had the chance to revise your own previous knowledge about food sources, deficiencies of most of these nutrients. This article is a little advanced, so just save it in your reading list wherever you have and go through it in your relaxed time. All the information that we are talking about, that is there with some extra bits. So not compulsory, but if you can even revise the quiz and the match and drag activity after this lecture, that would also be sufficient. So today we'll learn a little bit more about functions of water-soluble vitamins. Our aim would be to look at how they are absorbed, name of the transporters. Then when you're taking your notes, keep underlining the cofactors so that you have in your clinic preparation, when you are choosing those multivitamins or supplements, be aware which nutrient supports absorption of that particular vitamin, and sometimes too much of it can actually inhibit absorption of some of these water soluble vitamins. So we'll go through that today. So the first one that we are talking about today is vitamin C. Humans, unlike most animals, we are unable to synthesize vitamin C endogenously, so it is an essential dietary component. Sufficient uptake and whole body distribution of vitamin C is essential for many biochemical processes. But the good thing is that it does not require any digestion. And majority of ascorbate is absorbed in the intestine, and it happens mainly in the ileum. And here we have specialized sodium dependent vitamin C transporters. So you can see how crucial is sodium, because we studied that it is important for protein last week, and today we are talking about it in regard to absorbing vitamin C. Now, these are so specialized transporters that they are capable of accumulating ascorbate against a concentration gradient from micromolar concentration outside to millimolar levels inside. But wait, if we have too much of vitamin C, and remember the word I said, body knows. If the body thinks that somebody is fighting an infection and they need too much of vitamin C, then vitamin C can go inside the body even by simple diffusion. And I'll go through that in coming up slide where we discuss absorption in detail. So I've just added this picture uh, to show how ascorbic acid is different and what are its different form in the body. So you can see this is the ascorbic acid where it has its hydroxyl group attached here. Okay. Then ascorbate is when it loses one of its hydrogen. And then the free radical, when it is doing its antioxidant work, and it has donated the other one as well. And then there is a form called dehydroascorbic acid. And we'll know why I'm talking about that when we move a little further. So we are all aware here. Cool. So We all know that vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant having ability to donate a hydrogen atom and form a relatively stable ascorbic acid. So, and it is its main role in the hydroxylation reaction where it does all this function. So let's talk about this co-substrate for enzyme activity. What do you think it means? Co-substrate.
It's needed alongside, like
An enzyme in a reaction, yes?
Yeah.
Yes. Any example? Okay, so that's perfectly correct. So when an enzyme has to act, some of the enzymes actually have got metal ions with them, such as copper or iron. And we will study in week 4 how body changes quickly from, cupric to cuprous or ferric to ferrous. And to do that, vitamin C is needed. So if an enzyme has a cupric attached to its structure, we need vitamin C to convert it to its cuprous form. That is with a valency of 2 plus. That means it has 2 electrons in the outside. We don't have to remember all that chemistry, just for those out of there who are getting confused. That's why I'm explaining this stuff. Okay, collagen synthesis. In the next slide, we'll go through this reaction completely. Again, it's the hydroxylation reaction. Now, carnitine synthesis. Has anybody heard about it? What is carnitine? Anything?
Nancy, it's Kathleen here. I know it's an amino acid, isn't it? But other than that, Nancy, I'm not sure what carnitine.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Nancy.
Okay. Has anybody seen on the chemist shelves carnitine supplements being sold? Now maybe it will ring a bell.
So something to do with like fat burning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Only because I bought them. I remember.
No, that's fine. Very good. Yes.
I use it for exercise when I'm training. Yeah.
Yes. So it is actually a molecule required to oxidize fats in our body. And if you recall from your biochemistry, which might have been long back, it takes the long chain fats inside the mitochondria for beta oxidation, when we have to burn fats to get energy. So there have been some data, some clinical studies, human clinical studies, and they have shown that if people are deficient in vitamin C, they cannot oxidize fat because in synthesizing this carnitine, vitamin C is needed. Okay, so when people say that they are not able to lose weight, one of various reasons could be that their body cannot metabolize fats efficiently because this carnitine is not there.
Please get me a thing to
And then there are various neurotransmitters such as dopamine, adrenaline, where we need vitamin C as a cofactor for their synthesis, and we'll go through it in one of our sessions after our mid-semester break. Microsomal metabolism. Okay, so these microsomes, they are present in the endoplasmic reticulum. And here we are talking with regard to liver. So liver also has these microsomes and they are involved in detoxifying drugs or toxins that may be reaching to the liver for excretion. And there, the enzymes such as cytochromes, they need vitamin C. Why? Because by hydroxylation reaction, these enzymes, they convert toxic metabolites to harmless excretory products. That's why you might have heard people who are on detox, they take a lot of vitamin C. People who are stressed, they also utilize a lot of vitamin C, because vitamin C is stored in adrenal, and if we have too less of them, that means body is overusing it. Another interesting thing here, pro-oxidant activity. What does that mean?
I'm thinking pro-oxidant is obviously opposite to antioxidant.
Yes.
Yes, it becomes like toxic or?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. Absolutely correct. So pro-oxidant actually means, see, all these antioxidants, they have this free electron moving around. So they have the capacity to do the reverse also. However, what the laboratory data, when we are sacrificing those so many mice in the lab, what they have told is vitamin C is too busy doing all other work. So though it has the potential, but it is very rare that it happens. Plus, mostly it is happening when it is interacting with, cupric or ferric. As you might have heard, and we will explore in week 4, high amount of this free iron can be bad. It can damage the cell. So that happens only if we have too much vitamin C and it is doing nothing in the body, and it can go and attack those iron and copper molecules and make them reactive. But again, body has a defense mechanism. Copper and iron, they are always carried with the support of a protein molecule, so that it is not free. Sorry. So that's what's happening in the pro-oxidant activity. I've added this slide and I'll post this source on the Loop, that how important vitamin C is for the brain health as well, and its deficiency can actually lead to any of these conditions. Right, so Stephanie is asking about in the chat regarding inflammation and immune system. Was that the answer for pro-oxidant, Stephanie?
Yes, that was what I thought it was.
Yeah, okay. So now the difference is clear. So when that activity happens, it will definitely lead to inflammation. But biochemically speaking, that's the reaction which is happening.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So some of the other functions.
Nancy, I'm sorry, could I just interrupt you and ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
You said pro-oxidant activity can happen when we have too much vitamin C, but as a water-soluble vitamin, doesn't the body just excrete what it doesn't need?
Yes, it does. It does excrete most of it. And in fact, we are absorbing only 500 milligrams. Even if, we are going through a viral infection and we choose to take 3 grams a day, but body is able to absorb only 500 milligrams at a time.
Yeah.
But there may be time that extra vitamin C remains in the body.
Yes.
Then it has the capacity. That's what I want the message going across. Okay. That it has the capacity, but it is very, very rare. Yes.
Very rare. Very rare.
What you pointed out is again another reason that this phenomena is rare.
Rare, yeah. So Nancy, we generally can only absorb 500 milligrams, but then sometimes on some occasions we can absorb more than that, and this can create this pro-oxidant activity. Is that correct?
Yes. That
Thanks, Nancy. Thank you.
Great. So this is the function which I was talking about, that vitamin C is such a important constituent of cosmetic industry because it supports the hydroxylase enzyme that is required for forming collagen. And what we also need is proline, lysine, glycine, and iron, which is needed in this chemical reaction. Okay, so I've just added few animations here, and I'll do that for others as well so that we go step by step. And I hope you have your notes or your table ready to fill in the different columns for vitamin C absorption. So when we are consuming this vitamin C and it's ascorbate, then major absorption happens with the help of sodium dependent vitamin C transporters. But sometime, this form dehydroascorbate also appears. It may be possible that we have consumed vitamin C after keeping it at the room temperature for a long time. So little bit of oxidation has taken place. Or it is also possible while passing through the digestive phase, it had to do its antioxidant function. So maybe it has lost one of its hydroxyl group. Then body is able to get this also inside the intestinal cell because body knows it is important. Now have a look. Which is the transporter for this form? What is GLUT?
That takes in glucose.
Yes. Yes. Yes, Kathleen. So we are able to use the same GLUT transporters to get this dehydroascorbate, and then in the intestine we can convert this back to ascorbate. Okay, let's stay here. Implications. Nutrient-nutrient interaction. What do you see from clinical perspective here? So if I'm consuming large amount of sugar, I have had a lot of chocolate and it was and it had a lot of sugar, and then I took one orange along with it. What will happen?
Well,
Don't say orange, let's say orange juice. Yeah.
Nancy, would it say that perhaps the GLUT transporters, they would be saturated, would they, with the glucose? And also it would compete, wouldn't it? Because we take in glucose with the sodium glucose linked transporter, don't we? So would they be competing?
Yes, there is a chance. Very good, Kathleen. Yes, there is a chance that this would be competing. It is also possible that body needs this dehydroascorbate, but too much sugar and it will just be excreted because GLUT are specific to sugar and they have a priority. Remember, intestines, they are so actively getting this glucose inside. So yes, there is a possibility of that. So Megan is asking, does it mean that vitamin C is not absorbed as GLUT1 and 3 transport glucose? Yes, Megan, but remember, it's the different form. If I'm taking my vitamin C tablet, it will still be absorbed. But if I'm taking dehydroascorbate for some reason, or it has reached the intestine after doing some work, then that one would be lost, unfortunately. So then moving on, at the basolateral layer, both forms can pass through and enter the blood. And in the blood, vitamin C moves around mainly as ascorbate, and it is a free form, so not attached to any protein molecule. And in fact, dehydroascorbate can also move around. Very low, but it is there for body to use. as we were talking just few slides before, that vitamin C absorption decreases with increased vitamin intake and absorption varies. Couple of years ago, I had Bell's palsy. So there was an indication that it is the herpes virus that may have gone and attacked my immune system. So I was discussing it with my colleagues, and they all told me to take 3 grams of vitamin C per day. And as you can see, it is highlighted in red here that around 50% absorption at 100 milligram dosage. So what I was doing, I was taking 500 milligrams 4-5 times a day so that maximal absorption happens. Okay. So when we are, your book says that approximately 70 to 90% of vitamin C is absorbed at moderate intakes of 30 to 180 milligrams. However, at doses above 1 gram, absorption falls to less than 50%. And as Kathleen pointed out, that may be excreted. So it's better if we want that vitamin C to support any of the pathways, immune system, adrenals, give it at a dosage of 500 milligram. Okay. Then another important point in these slides is talking about agonists such as glutathione. Again, this is what we are going to talk about a lot, especially when we are doing liver. Glutathione is an antioxidant that our body makes, okay, on its own. And vitamin C help regenerate glutathione. So that's why they both are agonist. And glutathione helps regenerate vitamin C. So what I mean by regenerate is when vitamin C has done its antioxidant function, it becomes kind of a free radical for a transiently short time. And at that time, we need glutathione and some other antioxidants to help out vitamin C so that it can again become an antioxidant.
Nancy, I thought I was listening to something yesterday and they said that vitamin C can donate an electron but not become unstable. But is that incorrect?
No, that's not incorrect.
No?
All the antioxidants, they are antioxidants,
yes,
because they don't become unstable. When we say unstable in these biochemical terms, it
yes,
actually means the energy potential of that free electron. So in the free radicals, that electron has too much energy, like
yes,
a 3 or a 5-year-old child, which is
yes,
bursting with energy, and he has to go out and play and do his stuff. Whereas in antioxidant, those electrons have low kinetic energy. So they are kind of stayed together to the molecule. They just don't run out. But again, they are free. They need some support. And that is given by other antioxidants so that they can again become an antioxidant with that extra electron to give away.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Nancy.
Good, welcome. Anybody else has any query at this stage? Okay, now it's written antagonist. So pectin, zinc, copper, high dose of iron. Now, is that a contradictory statement? What do you say? How can iron be an antagonist to vitamin C? Again, it should be high dose of zinc, high dose of copper, or high dose of iron. So the thing is, it is now known because, and that too high dose of non-heme iron, not the supplements that we are taking that are easily absorbed, because vitamin C is required to convert that plant-based iron into a form that our body loves to use to do its function. So there is a chance that if we are consuming too much of non-heme iron, vitamin C may have to be diverted away from its other function so that it can take care of that iron. Okay. So again, what we're trying to understand is that there has to be a balance of everything. Moving on, we now talk about thiamine or vitamin B1. Plant-based form, when it is found in legumes, in any greens, it is mainly the non-phosphorylated form. Whereas the animal foods would have the phosphorylated form. That means thiamine is attached to a phosphate molecule. So we have thiamine monophosphate, diphosphate, which is also called as pyrophosphate, and then we have triphosphate. So please remember that these phosphate forms of thiamine are the one that carry out major reactions and its function in our body. Because where is thiamine acting out? Where does it help in the body? What are its main function? Any recollection? Energy, remember energy pathways? So that's what's happening. It is giving its phosphate groups again so that that energy pathway can cruise along. Okay. Mostly in our body, we have TDP. 80% of the body's thiamine exist as TDP. So its main function, it is important for synthesizing pentoses and NADP that are acting in making our DNA also and in energy pathway also, especially where it has major role in muscle contraction or conduction of nerve signals. Then sometimes it doesn't act as a coenzyme, but it somehow helps sodium channels. So now let's come to the absorption. Remember I said something last time that when body has to absorb a nutrient at the intestinal layer, it breaks it down to the smallest form possible, absorb it, and then convert it back to the natural form. Okay. So remember that for every vitamin and every nutrient. So here again, only free thiamine can be absorbed. That means it does not have to be phosphorylated. So if I'm consuming meat and it has thiamine pyrophosphate in there, I won't be able to absorb it unless there are some enzymes called as phosphatases which break away that phosphate bond. When that happens, now I have that free vitamin B. Again, body has these specialized transporters called as thiamine transporter 1 and 2, which will absorb thiamine at the brush border even if it is at low concentration. But look at this. If B1 is in higher concentration, body can simply absorb it by passive diffusion. Tricky, isn't it? And tricky from exam perspective because you have to remember both. Then when it gets inside the intestinal cell, thiamine can be phosphorylated. Alcohol is known to inhibit expression of THTR1 and 2. That's why they say chronic alcoholism can interfere or can increase demand for all the water-soluble vitamins. So then moving on, at basolateral layer also, thymine has thymine transporter 1, and it can be taken into the blood by active transport. But in the blood, it can simply move around by facilitated diffusion. And other organs, because they are all needing it, mostly they are using the same active transport. So THTR1 is present in other organs also. Okay. And when this thymine, it reaches the liver tries to convert it into its coenzyme form, because that's how it will be used for various metabolic reactions. It is known that, some raw fish can have thyminases that can break thymine and make it unavailable. So these can be considered some antagonists for thymine absorption. Polyphenols present in tea, coffee, they can also do the same process, but vitamin C and citric acid, they are agonists because they prevent destruction of thymine. So I know a lot of facts here, but now let's try to discuss if we have a client coming to us and you suspect that they have vitamin B deficiency and let's say mainly thymine. So if we just focus on these absorption pathways or digestion and not on any clinical issue. So give some example. What could be the reasons for thymine deficiency in a person's body?
Too much alcohol, so chronic alcoholism, as you said before.
Yes, Megan, that's correct, because that will interfere with those thymine transporters at the gut layer. Good. Anything else?
Also, Nancy, perhaps if people are having a cup of tea or coffee with their meal.
Yes, correct. Sometimes, I know of people who take their multivitamins with tea and coffee. Yes, definitely. Unless, sometime now these novel pharma processes and new drugs are coming, sorry, not drugs, supplements are coming up. They are trying to make them so that they're released in the gut when all the antagonist-free factors are removed. So have a look at those supplements. But yes, you're right. What else? Okay, there are a few comments in the chat box. Courtney is sharing high meat intake. Why high meat, Courtney? Just trying to think, what are you thinking? Yeah, Amanda is right, raw fish, yes. Let's say, why do you think high? Okay. There is a possibility, if somebody is trying to have all the thymine from meat sources, and if they don't have phosphatases, then what will happen? Would that thymine be bioavailable? So yes, you may be right. It's possible. Phosphatase, somebody has a genetic hereditary issue where they don't make enough phosphatases. Then having too much of animal foods may be an issue from the perspective of thymine absorption.
And Nancy, is it possible genetically to have not have those the transporters that take in the THTR1 transporters? Does that happen? Sometimes people lack them.
Very good, Kathleen. Actually, I was coming to that. Yes. So it has been noticed that it is a rare deficiency, but yes, it does happen. People may have a lack of the gene that are prescribing for THR1 and THR2, and that is, it is called as Rogers syndrome. So people may have megaloblastic anemia or deafness, which are some of the symptoms of that syndrome. So definitely, yes, that's an issue.
Nancy, what was the syndrome called?
Rogers syndrome. And
Rogers.
it's written in your book. It's
Okay.
on page 313, and I'm
Okay.
using 7th edition.
Thank you.
Welcome. It's at the bottom of that page.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Welcome. Okay. Do you think low protein can have an issue?
Yes, Nancy, because low animal protein, it's not, the plant foods is thiamine, but it's not the coenzyme form, is it? So the body would have to convert it, is that correct?
Correct, yes. And body, how does body make these transporters? They're all proteins. So that could be a reason. And one reason could be alcoholism, because liver is not able to make those protein transporters. Okay. So we have covered that. We have already covered that. And would leaky gut. I know I said we don't talk about diseases, but if somebody has an issue with microbiome, they don't have a healthy, good bacteria, and it may not translate into a disease yet, but the absorptive layer of the gut is thinning. So that may be the reason as well. Okay. Any other question at this stage? Okay, let's move along with the next one. And definitely we will take a break at our 1 hour interval period so that we can all go through this info again and give a little rest to our gray cells. Right, riboflavin. Would anybody like to comment? Good sources of riboflavin? Green leafy veggies is one. Okay, so there are different forms. We have free riboflavin and we also have protein bound riboflavin, which is found in milk and eggs.
Right.
But it is the coenzyme form which our body uses. And what are those forms? Flavin mononucleotide and flavin adenine dinucleotide. And we all know riboflavin may be destroyed with exposure to sunlight. So remember to protect it. That's why, you know, long time back, we used to get milk in those glass bottles. Some of you might not remember that. Okay. Functions, again, very important vitamin for electron transport chain and fatty acid beta oxidation. It acts as a coenzyme when we are making and catabolizing purine, that is DNA pathway. It is important for synthesis of the active form of folate. Sorry, it should not be folate here. It should be synthesis of the active form of folate in our body, which happens in a pathway called as 1-carbon metabolism. And we will go through it in our session 8, because it is in that same pathway we talk about the MTHFR gene. So keep your questions saved for that session. Then look at this point. I would like you all to remember this one. It is required for glutathione action. Again, we will go through detail in our liver session. So when glutathione has done its function, that is, it has acted as an antioxidant, now it needs to be regenerated. And for that regeneration, it depends on riboflavin, because it takes this molecule, okay, FADH. So that molecule comes from riboflavin. And look at the next one. Tell me, what does that mean? What is H2O2? I want you to make this deduction on your own. Okay, somebody has something in the improved immunity is correct, Annie. Yes, but again, in biochemical terms, what do we see here? H2O2, guys, what is it?
Sounds a bit like water, Nancy. H2O.
Yeah, it is like water. That is H2O.
Yes, H2O.
It is hydrogen peroxide.
Hydrogen. Oh.
Okay, and it is toxic, isn't it? So what's happening is, again, in one of our chapters, we will go through in detail, but I just want this to stay with you all, that our immune cells, they will use vitamin B2 to produce actually a toxic compound. Why? Because then body uses that to destroy the bacteria, harmful bacteria. And then body has a way. Actually, body uses glutathione to get rid of that excess toxic compound. Okay. So,
Nancy, you know how
yes.
you said, sorry, Nancy, the reduction, you know, with glutathione, it needs B2 for regeneration.
Yeah.
Now, does it need B2 and vitamin C? Because you said it, vitamin C, it needs vitamin C to regenerate. So does it need both of them, or just one, or the other can regenerate?
No, it needs both of them.
It needs both. Okay, thank you.
There is a complete cycle of it. Just we'll go through in detail.
No worries. Thank you.
And I'll repeat there that B2 is a cofactor there.
Thank you.
Okay. So, and with this one, again, we will discuss about this last step also in detail later. Okay. Now let's, again, I've added few animations so that we go slowly with the absorption of riboflavin. So again, any idea based on thymine and whatever we have discussed so far, what should be the first step if I'm consuming riboflavin in egg? So I had boiled egg in my breakfast. So I had riboflavin, it has come for absorption. Any wild guesses? What would be the first step?
Nancy, the body would have to break it down into some sort of the smallest component, doesn't it, to absorb it? And then it can.
Yes. Correct. Very good, Kathleen, and thank you. I know everybody else was also thinking the same thing. So first, it has to be separated from the proteins. And for that, we need hydrochloric acid. Okay. And we need pyrophosphatases again because they will break that phosphate bond. So then at brush border, that free riboflavin will get collected and we have active transport by riboflavin transporter 3. There are many 1, 2, 3 in different organs, but from this subject perspective, you have to remember only riboflavin transporter 3, RFT3, and it will take it inside. But also remember, what does the body do later? Body convert it back to its coenzyme form, FMN. Okay, and body expends some energy. And at the basolateral layer again, it has active transport. And when it enters the blood here, it can be transported with the help of albumin. Then it reaches the liver where FMN can be converted to FAD. And so that it can be used for all its function, including purine catabolism. And we still don't know, we are still learning. So that's why it's written that in the liver, its uptake may be dependent on calcium. We don't know yet. But again, if body needs it, and if I'm taking multivitamin with a high dose of vitamin Bs, then by simple diffusion, I can absorb that riboflavin. And like any other vitamin B, alcohol inhibits B2 absorption, and presence of bile can facilitate B2 absorption, maybe because it is supporting the intestinal permeability. Not supporting, sorry, supporting intestinal impermeability should be the right word. Okay, so these absorption steps are quite similar, and it is kind of similar in a way what the body does to them, but you have to remember the name of different transporters, which is also kind of easy. For thiamine, we have thiamine transporter. For riboflavin, we have riboflavin. Okay, so whatever I explained in the diagram, that is what is all written in these slides. So absorption for riboflavin is also saturation dependent. 95% is absorbed, and after that it may be excreted. Okay, couple of things to remember here again when we are talking about antagonist, agonist, or kind of importance of riboflavin, that people who have insulin resistance, people who have diabetes, there is riboflavin deficiency as well. Okay. Why it can be, I tried to look up and I could not find any specific pathway through which that is happening. But my understanding is because in diabetes, all the metabolic pathway are deranged. So that might be reason that riboflavin may be becoming deficient. And there are many animal studies and human studies where they have supplemented people with riboflavin, and that has improved the symptomatology of diabetes. So it helps. But again, it is kind of in a research phase. We can't think about supplementation of riboflavin to directly support nutritional management of diabetes. But be mindful that if you have a client coming to you with this status, they may have riboflavin deficiency. Then look here, last one. Thyroid disease alter the metabolism because thyroxine regulates conversion of riboflavin to its mononucleotide form. So people who have hypothyroidism may again be deficient in the active form of riboflavin. They may be consuming food, proper food, but their body may not be able to convert it into its active form. Questions, comments?
Nancy, so with the B vitamins, generally because they've got different transporters, they don't ever compete with one another. Is that correct?
Yes, they won't. Actually,
that's very
yes,
smart.
because they actually support each other. And as we will see in one carbon metabolism cycle, they actually need each other. They are like a big family again. They help each other out. So it's always better. If you're taking B12, take folate and B6 with it. If you're taking B2, take B6 and B9 with it. So it's always better to take B in a complex form.
Okay, thanks, Nancy.
Great, welcome. Okay, let's move on to the next one and we'll take a break after this one. So we are now at vitamin B3, which exists as NAD, that is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide and nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. And this NADP is what we call as the active form or the coenzyme form. In nuts and legumes, it is found as nicotinic acid, but our body can synthesize it in liver from tryptophan. Does anybody remember from Foundations of Human Nutrition? What is the conversion factor in amounts? Like how much niacin we can make from how much tryptophan? So it is, we can make 1 milligram of niacin from 60 milligrams of tryptophan. Too much dependence on tryptophan. Yeah.
Nancy, how much niacin do we need then? Is it like, it seems to be using up a lot of tryptophan to make one little bit of niacin. But we probably don't make enough. We need to take it in our diet as well.
Yes, it's better to take niacin rather than put pressure on tryptophan because it is required for neurotransmitter synthesis. So we will have to revise our recommended dietary intakes for niacin. How much is it? RDI.
I can't remember, Nancy. Nancy, I'll have to.
I'm just going through the book. It will have it.
Okay, thank you.
Just doing it. Niacin. Nice RDA for niacin for adult men and women are 16 milligram niacin equivalent. Okay. So it's up to 18 milligrams per day. So yeah, we need to take niacin on its own. Functions like other vitamin B, niacin is also involved as a coenzyme in various energy pathway. It is also used to synthesize fatty acid, cholesterol, proline. Look here, glutathione again. So both B1 and B2 are important for glutathione. It is important for neural health as well. If you are reading some literature, you may have found that for a long time, niacin has been used with statin for people at a risk of atherosclerosis. But that, and it has been done for now 30 years, but now evidence is showing that it may not be that useful. So just be aware and read up the latest literature if there is any recommendation that comes up. And I'm just trying to make you aware that there may be controversial and contradictory literature when you read about this. Okay, again, digestion. Now I know you all are getting familiar with it. That first, from food form, pyrophosphatases will release free niacin, and then at the brush border layer, at low concentration, it will be absorbed by a sodium-dependent carrier-mediated facilitated diffusion. However, if I'm taking multivitamin with a high dose of vitamin B3, niacin can pass through simply by passive diffusion. Okay. You will find in your book that in kidneys and red blood cell, nicotinic acid can only move into the cells via facilitated diffusion, but in the brain, active transport is happening predominantly. Okay, let's take a 10 minutes break now. Listen to some music, do some stretching. So it's 9:25. So we'll come back in 10 minutes and we still have, I think, 4 nutrients to go through. So let's
Nancy,
yes.
can I just interrupt you just before we go? Can you tell me what page is that on about the kid? You were saying about B3, it can go in, was it via passive diffusion, but in the brain needs active transport. Is that what you were saying for B3?
Yes, okay. I'll find the page and let you know.
Thank you, Nancy.
That's fine, welcome. Let's continue with pantothenic acid, that is vitamin B5. So mostly vitamin B5 is present as coenzyme A. And in supplements you will find mostly it is as calcium pantothenate. Interesting fact is that healthy bacteria in the colon that can also generate B5 and it is available for absorption to the body. And vitamin B5 has its other friends in the B family. They are easily destroyed with heating and sometimes too much freezing as well. Functions, pantothenic acid is needed for synthesis of coenzyme A. And remember, where do we use it? For metabolism of carbohydrate, fats, and protein. So we need TCA cycle to begin by making of coenzyme A. And pantothenic acid, it joins B1, B2, B3 in oxidative decarboxylation of pyruvate so that the cycle can continue and then enter the mitochondria. Its digestion is simpler. So again, we need to separate it from its food component. And that is, again, we have similar enzyme phosphatases and pyrophosphatases. Mostly we are consuming it by passive diffusion at high concentration at the brush border. But when it is in low concentration, it uses what we know as shared multivitamin transporter, SMVT. And you will hear this name again when we do certain minerals. So there is that chance of a competitive inhibition that if somebody is deficient in various nutrients and they only need SMVT, then many things need to be carried along with just one transporter.
Nancy, can I just ask you a quick question?
Sure.
You know how we use these pyrophosphatases? It seems to use them, the enzyme that breaks down ready for absorption for these vitamins. So if we are low in pyrophosphatases, do they have preference over breaking one down to the other or not really? There's, you know, they seem to act on it for all the B vitamins, don't they? They seem to break off them from the food.
Yes, yes.
Or would it just be generally probably low in B vitamins if you are low in pyrophosphatases?
Yes, that's my understanding too. Yeah, I don't know whether they have a preference for any of the bees.
Yeah.
Yeah, but their main role is to just free them.
Free them. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy.
But yes, that's a quite good point that if there is a functionality issue with these enzymes, and again, if I say if people are not consuming good quality proteins, because we are making all these enzymes and transporters from protein. If we have a liver issue, then yes, that would affect absorption of all the vitamin Bs from food sources, natural. Yeah, if we are popping pills, then passive diffusion, body needs it, it will all go in. Yeah, interesting. There are still things we are not sure of. So I'm not sure whether I answered you.
No, you did, Mancy, you did. But you know, Mancy, how you said if we take these vitamins in high concentration, they just automatically come in by passive diffusion. But there is a lot of controversy, isn't there, about saying whether taking a multivitamin is helpful or not?
Yes. Yes, there is. And I think one of it, would anybody else like to comment, please? Have you also heard that taking all that high dosages, is that good? Is that bad? Is that okay?
Because, you know, sometimes they just say you're peeing it out, isn't it? They're just saying it's expensive pee. Yeah, but.
Yeah. Again, have you noticed that when we are talking about absorption, we are saying if in low concentration, if in high concentration. So how does body decide that? If I have worked out a lot, if my body needs it, then it may consume most of that vitamin Bs. But if I am just, I was told, let's say 5 years ago, that you need to consume that vitamin B complex. And I'm doing it till now, whereas I have a sedentary lifestyle. So I have no use of that excess vitamin B. So definitely I'll be excreting it out. Is that kind of answering?
Yes, that answers, Mancy. Yeah, it
And
answers.
is there any side effect of these excess dosages?
But
They say vitamin B is harmless because it is excreted, but has anybody heard or faced any such?
there is one, isn't there? Is it B6 that can be stored, Nancy? I remember hearing that there was one B vitamin that is stored or can
For
be
a short duration. B12 is one. Yes, thank you,
Yes.
Jane. That's correct. B12 is stored. A little bit of pyridoxine, it is stored as its active form, but again, for a very short time, and I don't know what would be that duration because neurotransmitters, they are using it quite regularly.
all the time.
Now, coming back to the toxicity, yes, sometime we do notice. There was a particular brand, it was a new brand in Australia, and I went to a workshop and they shared that sample and I used it, and I had rashes, itching after that, taking that multi B complex. And but I just had a lot of water, and I was not sure whether it was that supplement, so I was fool enough to take it again next day. Same thing happened. Took lot of water, let it flush out, and the symptoms subsided on its own. And then I stopped taking that supplement. So I don't know whether it was the form of bees in that supplement or it was a too high dosage for my body to handle. So high level of B12 can have side effect. Yes, Tracy is correct. Amanda is talking about B3. Yes, that's what I suspect, Amanda, that I had excess of B3 that day. And sometimes there's tingling sensation. That also I've heard some people may have. So we are learning. Earlier, for a long time, we thought that they don't have any side effect.
So Nancy, theoretically, if you're eating like a whole food diet and you've got good gut absorption, theoretically, you wouldn't need a multivitamin.
I agree, definitely.
And it's only if you're having, like, you are an extreme athlete or you've got excessive use of these B vitamins that you'd recommend taking some sort of a multivitamin.
Yes, yes. And again, in your clinic, mostly you're going to get people who have not a very optimal functioning liver. And because of lifestyle and the environment that we all have created for ourselves, Yeah, most of the people are coming with gut issues. So at that level, for again, aim is that for 3 months, give that supplement support. And as soon as you notice that all the blood levels are normal, symptoms have subsided, clinical signs are not visible anymore, it's good to go back to normal food, isn't it?
Yes,
Rather than
yes,
having those pills like astronauts.
yes, yes. Very good, Nancy. Thank you.
Welcome. You know, there was a time when we all were, and that's not giving away my age, is it? That we used to watch Star Trek. Star Trek. And there we used to see people popping those pills. And like I, as a child, used to think that's going to be the future. And now, like I'm in that future and I'm saying, no, polypharmacy is really not a way to, consume nutrients.
Yeah, no, I agree, Nancy, definitely.
Great. Uh, Amanda and Courtney both have a point here that if people have high stress levels, yes, so they need more Bs because they are using it more. Adrenals are pushing. And if diet don't meet, yes, for that we need to do a dietary analysis using softwares. We have some very good softwares now. I know that most of you use Food Zone or Food Work in Endeavor, but there is another one which I came to know and I'm typing it down. Oh, okay, it has to go to everyone. Okay, so whenever you are in the clinic or in your preclinical subjects, try to search for Nutritics and have its free trial. It is for 7 days. It's a good one. I really like its software and the way it gives you information. I use that one. Okay, so we digressed a little, but that's okay. Now we are talking about pantothenic acid. So in the blood, it is moving in a free form, uptake into the red blood cells. So what does uptake means? Absorption inside the blood cell via basolateral layer is simply by diffusion, and it can be stored for a short duration in these organs. And as any other nutrient, these conditions such as IBS or diabetes mellitus are considered antagonists because they are interfering with the absorption. Coming to pyridoxine, that is vitamin B6, it's going to get more and more complicated? No. Simply need to understand that all these vitamins have a coenzyme form where they have a phosphate attached to them. Again, more and more you read, more and more I try to understand human body, I see that phosphate molecule is going wherever energy is going, isn't it? So we are making ADP into ATP, diphosphate into triphosphate. And that's what these coenzyme forms of vitamin Bs are doing. So non-phosphorylated form of pyridoxine is, it's pyridoxine. Now I've written alcohol form here. It doesn't mean ethanol. It actually means the functional group that is attached to the structure. Okay. So pyridoxal is the aldehyde form which has a CHO attached. And pyridoxamine, as the name suggests, has its functional group as amine. And when our body is phosphorylating it for its function, we have pyridoxine phosphate, pyridoxal phosphate, and pyridoxamine phosphate. The reason I've highlighted PLP in red is, please remember it from neurotransmitter pathways, and also that this is the active or coenzyme form of pyridoxine. coming back to our main aim to learn about its absorption. Again, phosphorylated form has to be dephosphorylated. And this is done by a different enzyme called as alkaline phosphatase, and it is dependent on zinc. Okay, so now at the brush border we have these free forms. So at normal healthy ranges, at brush border, these free forms are absorbed simply by passive diffusion. When they have to go in the blood, they move around again with albumin. So the same thing is shown in the figure here. It's also passing into the blood. What we know so far is by simple diffusion at the basolateral layer. And again, body has to use it in its active form, which is the natural form. So everything, all the free forms, they reach the liver when they were attached to albumin in the blood, and now body uses some energy. There is a mistake here, sorry, it should be ADP here. One phosphate molecule is lost and pyridoxal is converted to pyridoxal phosphate, and we have kinase enzyme that are acting here. Okay, so remember its active form, pyridoxal phosphate. Moving on to vitamin B12. It is also present in our body in different form. Mostly it is attached to a methyl group. It is one of the methyl donors. It is important for methylation reactions. And the form, which is main form, is methylcobalamin, but it may also exist as adenosylcobalamin. Few other forms listed here. Rich sources, we all know, meat and meat products, fish, eggs, milk, okay. Functions, it is important for erythropoiesis. It is really, really important for neurological function. Then it is necessary for synthesis of purine as well as pyrimidine. It is important for epigenetic mechanism, that is methylation. Let's not go into detail here. Again, we'll go through in lesson 8 about this methionine synthase and homocysteine stuff. Okay. And L-methylmalonyl-CoA mutase is an enzyme in fat and protein metabolism. And if we want to check whether somebody has an issue in B12 metabolism, its excretion in the urine is checked. So we look at its metabolism. Okay, now we are going in detail about B12 absorption. You might have noticed that I've shifted slide a little. So I'll go through it step by step. Please look at the video after the lecture to revise the way I am assuming you all have done about lipid absorption. Need to get the sequence of these absorption steps right. Continue to write here also as we go through each one. Now remember, B12 is a special vitamin because it is required for DNA synthesis. So at every step, body tries to protect it because it is sensitive. It can be attacked or maybe degenerated by bodies and other enzymes and other pH or hydrochloric acid. So at every step, you would notice that it is attached to a protein molecule. So what happened, mostly B12 is found in the protein-rich food. So it is bound to a protein. So what happens at the first step is that hydrochloric acid and then pepsin take away that protein portion. However, as soon as that happens, in the saliva only, we have these proteins called as haptocorrin, and it's all coming up in the slides later on. Or we can also call them as simply R protein. So as soon as B12 gets alone by removing the protein, these R protein, they get attached to B12. Now this travels in the entire gut. We all know that intrinsic factor, which is required for its absorption, is secreted in the stomach, but it does not get attached to B12 here. B12 and R complex and intrinsic factor, they both travel separately till they reach ileum. Okay, ileum is the place where B12 is absorbed. So here these R proteins are acted upon by proteases. So they are being consumed or metabolized or removed from B12, and now intrinsic factor gets attached to B12. And when it reaches ileum, they both are absorbed in the intestinal brush border. There is a receptor here, and that receptor is known to be needing calcium. That's something we have come to know, understood quite recently. So calcium is required for B12 absorption too, because it supports this receptor, which takes in B12 and IF complex simply by endocytosis. Okay, comments, question. Take a minute to go through these slides so that you all can remember these steps.
Nancy, can I just ask, what was the last chemical that you spoke of that was a recent addition to this process?
Yes, it is that this receptor at the brush border,
Yeah.
which is specific for B12, it needs calcium.
Oh, calcium.
Yeah.
Nancy, I'm surprised that B12 is absorbed so late in the small intestine.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the other nutrients that a lot of that is absorbed in the duodenum and the jejunum. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes, correct.
So that's one surprise for me, Nancy.
Yes, maybe because these receptors are here.
Yep, that's true. That's true. And I didn't realise, I always thought the intrinsic factor was attached in the stomach, because most the videos you listen to on B12, they'll tell you that the intrinsic factor attaches to it in the stomach.
Yes. No, it goes here till proteases can remove that R and then attach IF. Happens somewhere in the small intestine.
And Nancy, is it always B12 is always attached to a protein? Is it quite fragile? Is that why?
Yeah, maybe it is quite sensitive. That's what I have understood. Yeah, maybe. And I have not gone deep into its structure to understand why it is so fragile. But you can see what's happening in the body. So body is trying to cling to it.
And Nancy, what was I going to ask you about B12? Because none of the other B vitamins travel via a protein, do they?
No, they don't. They simply are phosphorylated and they are used up. Yes. And they are going freely actually. Yes.
And Nancy, is it right? Can B12, it can't be recycled, is it? It's just that some of it can be stored in the body. So that's why you can last for a little while without the B12, but then, and I think sometimes the symptoms of it, the myelin sheath symptoms, it's too late, isn't it? Because B9 can mask a B12 deficiency, can't it?
Yes, definitely. And that's a point that I was going to discuss under folate. Yes, that can play a role. It is called as methyl trap hypothesis. Yes. So that's an issue. There are a couple of things you have said there which are important. And I'm trying to say, we'll discuss it when we go to folate, okay?
Yeah, no worries, Nancy.
Yeah. So intestinal bacteria, they are also producing B12. And yes, you are right. Body is able to recycle some of the leftover B12. And if we are taking too much B12, it can actually impact folate. Again, it will kind of become clearer when we do 1-carbon metabolism, because it's a big cycle. I don't want to confuse you with all the absorptive pathways so early in our lectures. So yes, that is possible.
And Nancy, if the gut bacteria are producing B12, so that would be in the large intestine. So
Yes.
large intestine have these B12 IF receptors then in it?
No, it is
No,
not
or-
that can travel till ileum and then get absorbed.
So it would move up from the large intestine, right? Okay, thank you, Nancy.
They're quite interactive, all the gut.
Because this is a silly question, Nancy, but I know there's like an ileocecal valve, isn't it, that goes from the large intestine to the small intestine.
Yes.
How does it get through that then? I know it can there's small bacterial overgrowth, etc. So I know they can get up there. So I guess, is it the same thing? How does it get through that?
Similarly, maybe. Not sure. I've forgotten my anatomy. Sorry.
That's all right, Nancy.
I'll go back to the anatomy. Does anybody else would like to help us out? Anybody has a better memory of anatomy of ileum? But that's a good question. Again, I'm writing it down so that if I find something, I'll post it on Loom.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Okay. Any other question regarding B12 absorption? Is it clear? Okay. Go through it, ask questions on Loop, or message me if there is any doubt. Okay. Now, the last point here. Now B12 binds to transcobalamin 2 in the circulation. Portal circulation means in the liver area. Plus otherwise also it is moving around in the blood attached to transcobalamin. And if somebody has a deficiency, then we measure transcobalamin in blood. Now tell me, if we have elderly people who are known to be, B12 deficient and susceptible to all those deficiency related diseases such as pernicious anemia, what could be the reason? Now you have looked at its complicated absorption mechanism. Can you comment on the steps where elderly people may have an issue with B12 absorption?
Be decreased hydrochloric acid, I imagine, Nancy, would be one.
Correct, Kathleen. That would be my first point, definitely. Yes. So they may be consuming good diet, but because they are consuming, or the body's cells are not making enough hydrochloric acid, it is not bioavailable. Jane is saying, can intrinsic factor be lost with age? I don't know whether there is an aging issue, but it is, I think we can assume that with aging, everything slows down. So it is a possibility that function of intrinsic factor receptor may reduce or may get lost. Tracy is asking a very good related question. Would anybody like to comment? How can the body increase hydrochloric production?
Nancy, I think, can you help by like taking, is it apple cider vinegar or like a bit of lemon juice? Can that stimulate hydrochloric acid production?
Yes, correct. Thank you. Amanda is also saying the same thing. Very good. And again, one thing which we have been, I don't know whether you people, like my grandmother and mother used to always say, don't drink water 1 hour before and after taking your food. Again, I don't know why they used to tell me that, but in my understanding, and now I'm thinking that maybe because by doing so, we dilute that hydrochloric and that pH in the stomach before the food reaches. I'm not sure. Okay, so that can be one way. Okay, Diane has a point that bitter food consumption may increase hydrochloric acid. Again, I'm not sure, but it's a good thing to be looked at. Okay, right. Annie is asking, what about drinking water while eating too? Yeah, and again, if I do that, still now my mother and my husband, they are going to comment on it that this is a wrong practice. You should not be doing that. Yes, one should not. I agree, one should not drink water during the meals. Okay. Okay, let's come back to the question. So that was one thing. Two thing, and it's also possible that they may have low proteins as such. Okay. And they may also have, apart from hydrochloric acid, they may also have low amount of gastric secretions such as proteases. Okay. Plus, they may also have some gut issues, leaky gut or inflammatory condition that may interfere with absorption of B12. So, okay, good. Antagonist and agonist for B12, you can see I've deleted the first one because I could not find, I inherited these slides and I tried finding support of iron as an antagonist for B12, but I failed to find any research support and it's not definitely there in the book. So just delete that. Folic acid in excess supplemental dosage can result in masking B12 deficiency, the point that Catherine was making earlier. And the reason being because they support each other in one carbon metabolism where folate is getting activated. Pancreatic insufficiency is another thing which can lead to its deficiency, and veganism. Yes, it is known that it may lead to deficiency of B12. Agonist, calcium, as we discussed earlier. Another important thing to remember here is that liver stores B12 and the form that is stored is adenosylcobalamin. So important to remember from exam perspective.
Nancy, is it correct too? I think I've heard that fermented foods, they can be a source of B12, and also is there some form of mushroom that can help,
Yes.
that can be a form of B12?
Yes, you're right, Kathleen. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, now there is a point here, and yeah, like if Annie is asking, if we are consuming a good diet and we have good absorption of B12, do you think still people who are vegan can have an issue with B12? And it's the same thing, isn't it, with zinc and iron also? What is your take on that?
Well, Mancy, I think if they're consuming like the fermented foods and I assume the mushrooms that contain B12, they should receive, shouldn't they, their adequate amount of B12?
Yes, definitely. I've included it here because there's a lot of data. But I had an aunt, so I traveled back and she was sharing her symptoms with me. And kind of I was going two ways, whether vitamin D deficiency or B12 deficiency, because she has been a vegetarian all her life, but she does take dairy. So we got her tested and it was vitamin D, which was low, but her B12 was completely okay. It was above actually the normal levels in the blood. So it's okay to be vegan or vegetarian. But as Kathleen was saying, if you're taking a lot of fermented foods, and in that part of the world, people take a lot of yogurt, homemade yogurt. So she has no issue with her B12. But again, if I'm a practitioner and a client is coming to me, I would like to check it at least 3 months or 6 months based on her clinical signs or symptoms to ensure that her B12 is normal.
I guess when you're defining a vegan diet as opposed to a vegetarian diet, the yogurt would be considered vegetarian, but vegan being completely devoid of any animal product, unless they've got a very balanced, well thought out diet, they tend to lack B12 though, I thought.
Yes, B12 as well as the same thing goes for zinc and iron also. Yes, I know zinc not that much, but you are right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we have that sublingual B12 available from one of the, best to take it. Okay, that's why I said having that tested regularly.
B12 is not really well absorbed though.
Because as you have just seen, it's such a complicated mechanism. Yes.
Like I guess if people are low in B12, they'd often get the injection as opposed to like sublingually, they're often not absorbed that well.
Yes, if it's other issues combined with it, that's also not good. Yes. Good point. Thank you. Any other point?
Nancy, also, it does take a few years, doesn't it, for a B12 deficiency if someone does go on to a vegan diet and isn't consuming the correct, I guess, the adequate foods for B12. It does take, I think I've read about 3 or 4 years, doesn't it, for a B12 deficiency to manifest because we do have some stored.
Yes, that's correct. I'm not sure whether it's 3 to 4 years, but it's like those fat soluble vitamins as well. So we will have to look at the turnover data, the studies that have looked at this. I'm not sure about the time range, but yes, it may take a little while to manifest.
And Nancy, if you do take it sublingually, I thought it would be absorbed straight into the blood, so it would bypass the digestive tract. So I thought it would still be quite well absorbed. So it would go into the blood, wouldn't it? But then would it go to the liver? I'm not sure where it would go first, but
it should go to the blood and then to the liver, but depends upon which form it is. I think most of the time it is the methylated form.
Yes. Yeah. So does that mean it's already activated?
Yes. Yes. That is methyl and it is activated.
Yeah. So you can use it straight away.
Yes. Yes. That's my understanding, but it's a good point. I'll have a look at it. The form in the sublingual B12. Yeah. And its absorption as well. Very good point, guys. We all will look and post something on Loop. Okay. let's move on to folate. One of our favorite. It's my favorite for sure. Now, a little complication here regarding the forms, and I know there is a lot of data and literature out there, and we can discuss about that. So folate, there are actually over 150 different forms of folate. And raw green leaves, they have got a higher folate, but we can destroy it when we are cooking. It is made up of 3 parts. Its structure has a pteridine group, PABA group, and a glutamic acid. So the form that is present in the green leafy vegetable, it is actually a polyglutamate form. So that means a lot of glutamate chains are there. But the form that is the supplemental form, and I'm not saying the methylated active form, the usual folic acid that we found in most of those supplements, especially for pregnancy time, it is the monoglutamate form. So it is the synthetic form. So it has only one glutamate molecule so that it can pass through the intestinal layer very quickly. Okay. I wanted to talk, has anybody heard about folinic acid?
I have heard of it, Nancy, but
Yeah, it is quite popular nowadays. So, okay, let me just share something. So what happened is when the folate from foods comes, it is in the polyglutamate form. So a lot of glutamate chains, they have to be removed. And body tries to convert it into what we know as a tetrahydrofolate form. Okay, and this is the form that participates in DNA synthesis and methylation reaction. And there are kind of 3-4 steps here. And one of the steps is where the famous MTHFR gene acts because it makes an enzyme, methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase enzyme, that converts the tetrahydrofolate to its methyl form. Okay, so it is called 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So that's why people who have this SNP, who have this mutation, they are not able to make the active form of methyl tetrahydrofolate. So when I said there are number of steps, so after THF, body makes it into a folinic acid. So people who are undergoing chemotherapy, they are actually given this folinic acid supplement because the chemo drugs, they can't interfere with the cancer cells and the normal cells. So folate is highly depleted among cancer patients. So they are supplemented with folinic acid. Lately in the R supplement word as well, you would notice that apart from methyl folate, we are also getting folinic acid. So that's also an active form because it has gone past 2 steps. But if somebody has this mutation, they rather have methylated form and not folinic acid. Okay. So we'll
Nancy,
go through this
what-
pathway again. Okay, so just talking a difference between folinic, methyl, because I'm always asked about it.
So Nancy, is there a trouble if these people are given this high dose folinic acid and they've got this MTHFR SNP? Is there a problem there? Because what would happen if they can't convert that folinic acid? Does it just get excreted or?
Yeah, have you read something? First you tell me.
Have I read something?
Yes.
Oh, Nancy, I've just I think I've got the MTHFR. I've got
Okay.
the heterozygous form, so I think I've got one defect, not the double.
Mhm.
So that is why that is
Okay.
just something that I remember. I think at one point, someone said I couldn't take that particular supplement because of this SNP. I had to take the methyl form.
Yes, correct. So, okay, so the current literature says there are few articles, and I did a review on it. That's why I'm able to share with you all, that there is a potential that extra folic acid. Again, I'm not taking the natural form. Why? Because you are noticing that body takes so much time in absorbing these stuff. They break it into its normal, smallest possible form. So I'm talking about the artificial form, because it is a monoglutamate form and it passes very quickly. There have been researchers who have said that excess folic acid may promote tumorigenesis, because all cells need folate for DNA synthesis. Okay. Then there was a time during late 90s and early 2000 when researchers were trying to find out. You all know about mandatory food fortification with folate?
Yes, Nancy.
That
Yep.
all the cereals, they are added with folic acid. So there was this lot of data, and again, it was coming from America, where there is a group of researchers who are actually collecting blood from general public and looking at the folate values. And what they were looking was that the folate levels are really high. And there are some correlation data, and they were finding that since we introduced that mandatory food fortification, since then, maybe the cancer cases, few cancers, have gone up. So when this data was emerging, again, there were a lot of systematic reviews done and all that, and they were able to rebuke all these correlation studies that no, there is no such correlation. But there is still a potential that folic acid can be used by all the cells in the body. I have again, I would like to share something else also. In preeclampsia and women who are at risk of developing gestational diabetes. Okay? So you all know why this mandatory food fortification was started, and why women in their first 3 months of pregnancy asked to be given folate.
Nancy, it's to do, isn't it? It's some sort of, is it a neural tube defect or
Correct. Absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely correct, Kathleen, as also is Courtney. So what's happening is that's why, and the dosage that is given, does anybody remember what's the dosage in that form? How much folate to take? Okay, it's about 400 micrograms. So now this was data coming in 1960s. They realized deficiency of folate gives way to possibility of neural tube defects. So women should be given 400 micrograms of extra folate. But then they noticed women who are preeclamptic or who have gestational diabetes, they have more chances of babies born with NTDs, neural tube defects. So they assumed, the clinicians all over the world, they assumed that they have to given more. So for a long time, women were given about 4 milligrams of folic acid. Okay, till a couple of years ago, a multinational trial in which Adelaide University was involved. We did study in Women's and Children Hospital in Adelaide. And I think one of the hospitals in Melbourne was involved, Canada. and one of the Middle Eastern countries. So my PhD was part of that big trial. And what we found was that high dose of, this was a randomized controlled trial, big group, and the study findings were published only last year, that high dosage does not play any role in preventing neural tube defects among women who have preeclampsia. I hope I haven't confused you. So the point that I'm trying to make is that have a look at the supplemental dosage and form very carefully. Look at how is this nutrient getting metabolized? Is there any scope of it kind of causing damage rather than supporting? So that's why I always share this information with the students.
So Nancy, the 400 micrograms is preventative of neural tube, but when they went up to this 4 milligrams, it wasn't preventative, but they'd only go up to that in people with preeclampsia. Is that right? Or risk of preeclampsia and
Yes, so 400 microgram is protective amongst healthy women.
Yep.
4 milligram, which was assumed to be effective for women with preeclampsia or even, diabetes, that is not effective.
Okay.
So we have to find some other solution.
Some other solution. Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
we have to. Now I know that there is research that high calcium helps. In fact, women who have an epileptic shock, they are given magnesium. And there are a couple of other nutrients. Arginine. Arginine is explored too. Okay. Arginine reduces blood pressure. So now we are looking at that. Okay. Sorry, let's get back.
Thank you, Nancy, for sharing that.
Okay, so we know folate is important for epigenetic mechanism, such as making methionine as well. It is important for SEMI. SEMI is actually S-adenosyl methionine, and we make it in that same pathway, which I keep saying again and again, but I'm not showing it to you, 1 carbon metabolism. And SEMI is the major methyl donor in our body for all methylation reactions. So folic acid in the fortified food and supplements does not need to go digestion because it is the monoglutamate form. Folate in the foods is polyglutamate forms, and it must be digested to the monoglutamate form in order to be absorbed at the brush border. And here, what we need to remember is that this chain is hydrolyzed with the help of the enzyme which is specific for folate, and it is called as conjugases. These enzymes are zinc dependent and they need low pH. Okay? So the primary form that will enter our blood would be 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So remember this expanded name, 5-MTHF or 5-methyl-THF from exam perspective as well. If you are interested in doing research or knowing more about B12, then Professor Herbert has written a lot of books and research articles. That's why I've included this old reference for this slide. Staying with the absorption of folate. Now, the main carrier which is responsible for transporting folate is proton-coupled folate transporters. Then there are RCF also, reduced folate carrier. So you can see there are more than 1 transporters for folate at the brush border. So now your question 2 in your first assessment is about folate absorption pathways. So trying to look at steps at which a person who is not consuming a good diet may have issues with folate absorption. Now, when folate enters the intestinal cell, and if it is the monoglutamate form as such, they all need to be converted to tetrahydrofolate, and these steps are dependent on niacin. Again, it's a very important vitamin. So when it is moving about in other cells, we have specialized folate binding proteins to do so. So this was all in the intestinal cell. When it has to go to the blood or further, we still don't know whether it is an active mechanism or is it the same transporters that are available. We are still researching. Okay, so it's the same information in the diagram form, that polyglutamate forms have to be acted upon by conjugases so that we convert it into monoglutamate. Then and these conjugases act only when the pH is between 4 to 5. And then with the help of proton coupled folate transporter or RCF, they go inside the intestinal cell. So if people have issues with PCFT, if their liver is not making these transporter, if there is high alcohol consumption, then all this can be impacted. In fact, vitamin D is now known to play an important role in gene expression of this particular transporter. So if somebody is deficient in vitamin D, that can impact folate also. So can you identify a number of steps where folate absorption can be impacted? So again, over this weekend, go through these slides and look at the question 2 of your assessment so that your particular portion is already completed. And send me any more questions if there are. We have talked about this already. And last one is very short and sweet. It's biotin, which is also found in various food sources, and it is food sources such as liver, milk, soy, egg yolk, and it is produced by colon bacteria as well. But if somebody is consuming a lot of raw egg as eggnogs, if they are spending their Christmas in one of the colder European countries, then avidin is a glycoprotein found in raw egg white that may prevent biotin absorption. Anybody has a recollection of importance? How is biotin important? Why is biotin important? Its function? So in the energy pathways again, it is required for various carboxylation reactions. Okay, and it is definitely this one is in your book. Okay, water soluble vitamins has this information, and plus it is also required for methylation reaction, gene expression. And it does so by supporting histones. You know, our chromosome, it is coiled together as a chromatin. So all that information about gene expression is inside there. But it needs an enzyme dependent on biotin to unravel that chromatin so that genes can express themselves. Fascinating, isn't it? That's why, you know, people who have issues with hair fall, nail growth, it is noticed that they are deficient in biotin. For absorption, it is done by sodium-dependent multivitamin carrier or transporter. And we talked about it earlier as well. So there may be a issue of its competition for absorption with B5 or lipoic acid because they are transported by the same multivitamin transporter. But if we are consuming it in high doses, passive diffusion can also occur. That's all for today. Any questions?
Nancy, can I just check with you on slide 47? There's agonist to folate. FBPS, is that folate binding proteins or something? What's the agonist? Zinc B3. What are FBPs? It's slide number 47. Oh, there we go. Folate binding proteins. You've brought it up. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Nancy. I've answered my own question.
Oh, no, that's fine. I think we all love these questions. I always say we may not have the answer, but that kind of motivates us to look for some good material. So I have a couple of them today and I'll post that by Friday.
Thank you.
So that everybody else has got their lecture and they don't get confused with so much information coming on.
Nancy, sorry, this number on page 45, it says additionally reduced folate carrier, but its initials are RCF. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So why is it not RFC? What's that?
There are two transporters. One is PCFT, proton coupled folate transporter, and another is reduced folate carrier. That is RCF.
So why is the C and the F back to front? Is that a silly question, Nancy?
No, nothing. Say it again.
So you know how it's reduced folate carrier. Why isn't it RFC, not RCF?
Reduced cell folate carrier.
Reduced cell folate carrier. Is that what it is?
Again, I'm not sure, isn't it? Why they like that or why they abbreviated it like that. That's how it appears in the research papers when I see it.
Okay.
So let us check in the book. What does it say?
All right, thank you, Nancy.
We'll check
Nancy, can I just ask about the book? Is that the Gropper and Smith 2018?
Yes.
And is that just available? Okay, because I've just had a look for it online and a few different places look like it was out of stock. I guess it's available at Endeavour. Has anyone received it from Endeavour?
It's an ebook. I know that you can get it through the library if that's helpful.
Yeah, because I'd rather not buy it if I didn't have to.
Yes, yeah. And they've got older copies too, I think, that you can borrow, but it's definitely, I know I've looked, I haven't been into Endeavour, but you can read it online. If you.
Okay, thanks for that, Kathleen.
Thank you. No
Now
worries.
that's the best option, and that ebook became available only 2 months ago.
Oh, okay. I imagine it's expensive to buy as well. Would it be?
Yeah, not sure how much does it cost, but on the Facebook page, inquire from ex-students. Maybe they want to
Yeah, all
give
right.
away one of their copies. And if you find the old one,
Thank you, guys.
2016, that's also okay because you have the slides. If there is a new name of a transporter, I have updated it.
Okay.
That's one of the option if you want to.
Nancy, is it a textbook? Do you use it in other subjects? Is it one you recommend getting? Is it something that you'd refer to a lot or?
No, I don't think that it will be referred in any other subject.
Okay, no, thank you, Nancy.
Biochemistry. In the clinic subjects, you will have your clinical nutritional principle book.
Okay.
Yeah, not this one.
Thank you, because like it does get expensive if you're buying all the textbooks. Yeah, thank you so much, Nancy.
Well, welcome. I'll stop the recording now. Bye, and meet you next week.
Thanks, Nancy.